Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 394. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. George Bernard Shaw.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble and quarantined host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Before we get started, guys, I set up a special link to help people affected by the coronavirus, and you can donate to Feed America. There is a lot of people in need out there, and Feed America is a great organization, and they're helping millions of people on a daily basis, and they also need your help. If you want to donate even $5, $10, it goes a long way. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/help. Now, guys, today on the show, we have Jon Fitzgerald. Now, Jon is a very interesting filmmaker because not only is he an award-winning filmmaker, he is also the co-founder of the Slamdance Film Festival and the author of the book Filmmaking for Change. Now, this episode was recorded prior to COVID and prior to the protest movement and Black Lives Matter and everything that's going on in the world. But man, when I went back to listen to it to get it ready for this episode, I could not believe how timely this episode is. So we talk about how to make social change with your filmmaking. And I think it's more important than ever before that you make a change in the world with your art. And this episode and this conversation will help you get on that path. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Jon Fitzgerald. I'd like to welcome to the show Jon Fitzgerald, man. Thank you so much for being on the show, my friend.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Thank you, man. And like I was saying off air, your book makes a cameo in my film On the Corner of Ego and Desire. When we're in the bookstore, we pan across it. It's the first book that's seen in it. It's not a quick pan. It's a moment. You read the title. So I wanted to give you a shout out for the book.
I love that.
So before we get started,
another reason to see your movie.
Yeah, exactly. Now, real quick, before we get started, how did you get into the business?
I have a film degree from UCSB and broke into the training program at William Morris. And back then it was actually Triad, but it was acquired. And did the development thing a while, socking away my per diem, working on a script that I'd started in film school, and eventually raised the funds to shoot it. And like everyone else, really wanted to premiere it at Sundance, but it wasn't to be. Fortunately for me, I had met a couple other filmmakers at the IFFM in New York that year, and they didn't get in either. And so we all banded together and started Slamdance. So I kind of by accident became a festival director. We all did it together the first year as co-founders, and then I became the director for year 2 and 3. And brought in Peter Baxter was one of the producers of a film in the first year, and he came on as a creative director. And then I moved on to take over as AFI Fest director, and then Peter took over Slamdance. So that's the short version of how I got into this indie film space.
That's right. And Dan has been on the show. Dan Mervish has been on the show multiple times. And
he's great.
He also makes a cameo himself.
He's a true filmmaker.
Oh, man. He hustles, man, like there's no tomorrow.
He is hustling.
And he actually makes a cameo in the movie, and his book makes a cameo in the movie as well. So I tried to bring as many people as I could.
He's great. And he, I have to give him a lot of kudos. He's the one that wrote the first press release that was in Variety, and he was a big help, and he's a great guy. Now,
you wrote a book called Filmmaking for Change. Now, I wanted to ask you what the book is about and why did you write it?
Sure. Well, having done film festivals for a number of years, again, as a festival director, essentially curating movies, I found myself on a panel with Michael Wiese, and we're walking back to the hotel, and I said, "Hey, I've become more interested in what I call social impact movies, and I'm wondering, why you guys don't have a book on this subject. What would it take to make that happen?" And he said, "Well, send me an outline and the first chapter, and if it makes sense, we'll do it." So that's kind of where it started, and it's true. I had become much more interested in documentary and even narrative that were movies with some social relevance, and so I did that book, and really was thinking along the lines with some of their other books that this could be something that was taught in film schools to really help filmmakers learn how to take ideas and make documentary, but not just talking heads documentary, but how do you take a core of an idea and sort of break it down into a narrative structure. And I used some other Michael Wiese books, The Hero's Journey, for example, Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey in the 12 stages. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of the anchor for the book, and how to have, development and production and then distribution, and how you could take all these pieces and think of these movies as more narrative stories. And then I made a handful of documentaries along the way that I could kind of reference in the book as examples.
Now, documentaries are an easy play for social impact. They're kind of, if done correctly, they're kind of built to do that. Where I find it a little bit more complicated is in the narrative space. Do you have any tips or suggestions, and also examples of narrative films that have really has created social impact, besides Coming to America, of course?
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was writing the book, obviously I had to do a lot of research to give it some context, and what you really learn when you kind of take a deeper dive is that a lot of movies over the years have been social impact movies. They're just not labeled that way. Mm-hmm. And you even think about, Schindler's List.
Yeah, of course.
You think of Green Book.
Yeah.
Right. You think, if you look at the Oscars the last few years, it's Spotlight. You think of a lot of big narratives that actually have something to say. And so I think it's not something that audiences are necessarily looking out for consciously, but I think because there's so much wackiness going on in the world, I think that one of the reasons why we're seeing a kind of a spike in documentary and even social impact narrative is that people are more interested in learning now about the world around them and different cultures and getting to the crux of some of these big issues.
Now, how do you dance, though, the line between preachy and entertaining? Because if you start preaching, people tune off, even in documentaries to a certain extent. I'm a huge fan of documentary, and the whole plant-based food movement was started with documentary, basically with Fork Over Knives.
Forks Over Knives.
Yeah,
yep,
Fork
in my
Over.
book.
I'm sorry?
Forks Over Knives is in my book as a case study.
Yeah, Fork Over Knives, Food Matters, all those kind of What the Health and Cowspiracy and all these other ones. So they're very powerful. And even back in the day with Roger and Me, with Michael Moore and his social impacts with his documentaries.
Yeah.
But how do you dance the line between preachy and entertaining? We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I honestly think it's a combination of different factors that don't necessarily all apply into each project. I think each kind of has their own anchor. Obviously, with Moore, you've got a charismatic figure who you kind of want to watch because he's so crazy. But there's other documentaries where the filmmaking style is really interesting. You know, you think about Life Itself, right? The documentary made a few years ago, and they used animation. And this guy had grown up with a disorder essentially, and connected it back to Disney movies. And so I think it's really a question of what your style and your structure is. And if you can somehow weave in a narrative flow, I mean, there is a reason why, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to most of the bigger, more popular stories, whether it's a book or a movie. So I think that's the key. And I think, filmmakers are getting it. And that's why if you look back and to some extent we could thank Netflix, they've really, busted open the doors for documentary in the last few years, I think, with such a deep library and of course HBO. So they're out there and there's a reason why people are paying attention now. And I think it's because these stories are told in such an interesting way.
The one thing I found interesting about your book and what you're trying to say with it is that it does really fall into the concept that I've kind of been preaching about profusely over the last 6 months or longer, is this whole concept of being a filmtrepreneur, being an entrepreneurial filmmaker, and finding a niche and then feeding that niche, providing service to that niche. Social impact movies are literally that. Unless it's a very broad, like, racism or the Holocaust, and even that, those are still niches of the larger society. They're kind of pre-built for that. Do you have any tips on how, because I know when you're making a social impact film, money might not be a specific goal, but if you're raising money for a cause, for a foundation, then generating revenue is as important as if it was going into your own pocket, even more so than at that point. So still revenue generation is still extremely important for filmmakers, even doing social impact movies. So do you have any recommendations in regards to what you've seen over the years?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I love the idea of your book, by the way. And I've consulted for a number of years helping filmmakers kind of figure out their marketing and distribution strategy. And one of the things that I've been saying a lot the last few years is you really have to think of your movie as a brand, and you have to think about it as a product and not just find a distributor, stick it on that shelf, and see how many people might find it. You do have to do all the things that I'm sure you cover in your book. In terms of social impact, what's interesting is you need to have a call to action, and when I talk to filmmakers about this, it kind of all starts with the goal, and then you back into the process from there. And each film kind of has its own goal, right? Because a film about homelessness is not necessarily going to have the same goal as a film about the environment. You look at a movie like Racing Extinction, they created an amazing campaign, and I don't know if you had a chance to check it out, but the new book, the second edition, has a whole new section, which is called Activation, to your point, which is, how can you take this idea that was built with a mission in mind and put it in motion? And I think what Racing Extinction did, which was brilliant, is that they took this concept of climate change and they put different challenges in there with call to actions. Did you know that animal agriculture is responsible for 14.5% of global emissions? I mean, and then they talk about the fisheries. Did you know that 90% of the fisheries are overfished? So they talk about these issues, and then they follow up with questions and solutions and what you can do as a person to make your contribution. And I think part of the problem is that people get overwhelmed with the idea that, oh my God, there's so many problems. How can little old me make a difference? And I think it does have to start with us, and we have to just know that every little bit counts.
Yeah, there's I'm thinking a movie came like Boys Don't Cry, which obviously touched upon at the time really that LGBTQ rights, which was something that was not even discussed when that movie came out. Really, it was kind of like one of those films, and it could have been at the end like, hey, if you know somebody, put on, go to this website, sign up and get help or whatever that might be, or get assistance or whatever. There's always an ability, and I think the filmmaker just really needs to be very clear about what their end game is. I've even seen big movies that touch, obviously Schindler's List, with was it Socia project that Spielberg created, which was, to record every Holocaust survivor in an archive, right. And he used Schindler's List as a catalyst for that, as an educational tool. I think that you're right, that filmmakers really need to be very clear about what their end game is. And also, I was going to ask you, how can filmmakers, depending on the social impact they're trying to make and the niche that they're trying to do, how could they or should they team up with organizations in that niche to get the word out in ways that you can't, and also as basically free marketing? Because if you're making a film about the environment, let's say, or specific, something even more niche than that, and there's an organization about that, they have thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people on an email list, and they can market your film for free, essentially. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. You just hit it right on the head. I mean, with virtually all of these, what I call cause cinema movies, these are projects that have not-for-profits, depending on the category, whether it's the oceans or homelessness or education, veterans, you name it. All of them have organizations to support this effort, and it is, in a way, almost a sponsorship or a partnership agreement that is developed between filmmaking team and company. Really, it's going to them and saying, look, I've got this content and it supports your mission. How can we help each other? How can you get our message out to your audience base? Maybe it's giving you some content for your website, depending on what their forum is. But it really does come down to understanding, after you get past, underneath the layer of the goal, it's what's your distribution plan? Are you interested in playing on Netflix or HBO? And what if they don't want you? Are you going to play in schools? Are you going to play in high schools? Are you going to play in colleges? What is your action campaign that supports the screening? Are you going to have bumper stickers? Are you going to have T-shirts? What is your call to action? And I think once you back into what your distribution model is, I did a movie a few years ago called The Milky Way, and it's about breastfeeding in America.
Nice.
And kind of restoring the nursing phenomenon.
Correct.
It'll blow your mind just how bad America is at this really important.
I have kids. Trust me, I know. I was psychotic when my kids were in my wife's belly. I was just like, I did so much research. I watched so many documentaries. It was like, baby, you're breastfeeding. And she's like, I know, and don't tell me what to do.
But what's crazy though is that a lot of people just assume that
formula's
it's about
better,
the nutrition factor or whatever, but they don't realize it's the skin to skin. And anyway, I know more about that now than my wife did when she was breastfeeding. But the point is that these filmmakers weren't making it to make money.
Right.
Yes, they were on Netflix. Yes, they got the exposure, but it was more about how do we do a screening campaign that will give mothers an opportunity to see this movie, and who are the right partners to do that. So with that particular film, speaking of Tug, unfortunately, we did a campaign with Tug. And frankly, these filmmakers did not set the bar super high in terms of how many people had to see the movie to trigger the screening. They were thinking, look, if there are 15, 20 moms in that theater,
we're good.
That we help, we're in. So they didn't do it for money, and it's a wonderful thing to see when you see the emails flooding in ladies. They're both essentially nurses.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
To see the impact they're having, and that is a perfect example of a social impact film that we created with a beginning, middle, and end. Mm-hmm. It has a story. There's the good guys and the bad guys. There's some animation, and it's an interesting story, but it does make a difference. And they knew that it wasn't about how much money they were going to make. It was about connecting to these groups and having their Facebook and their Instagram and all these social media platforms and websites in that nursing category that could do outreach for them because the audiences want to know about this subject.
So since you've touched upon it, I want to talk a little bit about distribution, and that is, it's a dirty word in many ways. It has become a dirty word, and at the end of the day, it's always been
wild west.
And people think it's, oh no, everything's so much easier or it's more controlled. There are rules. There's absolutely no rules. It's worse than ever. And I actually had conversations today actually with filmmakers who are going through this whole Tug situation. If anyone listening has not listened to episode 373, where I break the story in regards to what happened with Tug and what Tug was and everything, but that there was documentaries who had educational series and educational content that was licensed by Tug, and now they're going to lose $8 to $10,000, and they're like, that's plus all the exposure for the cause and everything. It's brutal out there. So it's brutal out there for filmmakers as a general statement. But I think it's even a little bit more heartbreaking when you're doing this for almost a nonprofit, and there are nonprofit filmmakers out there that just want the cause to get out there, and they still get screwed, and the films get screwed. I mean, you're in the space. You're definitely in the space of distribution as well. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas about what can be done, what should you look out for, and we touched a little bit about the entrepreneurial filmmaking model, which I do believe is the future, or a hybrid version of that. But what's your take on it?
Well, I think I tend to try and look at things like a little bit more of the silver lining side. I do think that it is really disturbing when you hear about Distributor and Tug and these companies that were doing so well for filmmakers that shut down. I will also say though that by having so many new streaming channels, and frankly channels that aren't necessarily curating, there isn't as difficult of a barrier as there was some time ago. I mean, clearly, if you don't have a relationship with iTunes, you don't have a relationship with Netflix or HBO, it's going to be hard for you to get traction there. So I do think it's a challenge. I think to your earlier point, I do think filmmakers have to be entrepreneurial now more than they used to be. It wasn't just, I'm a visionary and I'm going to create an idea and then give it to a sales agent who's going to rip me off and try and sell it. You have to be able to get creative on your own. But I do think there are a lot of opportunities out there. You still have to do your homework. You have to know who the right players are. And you still, I believe, some of these content creators are creating channels for themselves, right? Roku has over 2,000 channels now, right? And there's going to be some consolidation, of course, but there's a lot of opportunity out there. You just got to do your homework.
Yeah, I mean, I even have my own streaming service, so that's dedicated to filmmakers. So, I mean, a lot of people have streaming services, and, I think the future is curation. I mean, you can't,
I agree.
I can't compete with Netflix. Not many people, Amazon can't compete with Netflix, so let alone me. So the broad spectrum channels, I think, will start to just die off because they won't be able to be sustained. Their funding will finally crap out and they'll close. And I've seen that already happening. But I feel that the niche or curated channels are going to be able to survive because people will want, if you're into documentaries, Curiosity Stream is a pretty good deal. I just signed up for $12 for the year. I'm like, okay, it was a quick end of the year or Black Friday sale. I was like, Sure, I might. Why not? So that makes sense. And I think you're right. There's just so much more homework that filmmakers.
There's a lot out there. There's a lot out there, and I do agree. There's going to be some consolidation for sure. That there won't be 2,000 channels in 5 years, but the point is, do your homework and see which of these channels have your niche.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that there is something to be said for curation, especially if you're focusing on a specific category. I think throwing as many ideas against the wall and just hoping a channel that has 17 genres
Mm-hmm.
is going to promote your title, that's a bit more of a challenge. But I do think, especially for docs and some very specific, like sci-fi, very hot, right? So I think if you're in a certain category and you do your homework and you can find a home, you have a chance to succeed there. And I still think having a website and having fans and creating community, as you know, I mean, those are the audiences that would come and see your next movie. So I still think you don't want to just give it up and wait for the checks to roll in. You gotta keep hustling.
Yeah. Well, you're preaching to the choir on that one. But I see it too, that the distributors, when I was at AFM this year, they're scared. They don't know what to do. I mean, all their golden calves are gone. So I literally asked a distribution company who was in a meeting with me. I go, you guys really have no idea how you're going to make money this year, are you? They're like, we're just going to throw up as many things up against the wall as we can and see what sticks. And the wall is moving. And the things you're throwing up against the wall are moving. So it's a constant game of musical chairs and nobody really knows what's going on. So that's kind of why I always, again, talking about entrepreneurial, is the exploitation of the movie is one revenue stream, while you should be creating multiple other revenue streams from other products and or services, like Fork Over Knives. I mean, those guys, I have them in my book as a case study as well, because they were brilliant. Perfect. Food Matters, Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Even Kung Fury, that little short film. Remember that? That guy, he, the niche of 80s action movies. I wouldn't say that's a social impact film, but depending how you look at it could be.
That's okay. That's okay. I worked on a really bad Steven Seagal movie.
You mean, so pretty much almost all of them, except for the first maybe 3 or 4?
Yeah. Well, on Deadly Ground, I have to say, I could actually sit through.
Oh, wait, on Deadly Ground, wait a minute. Is that the one? Is that the oil one?
No, actually, On Deadly Ground is the one that I worked on. Okay, it was horrible.
It's a horrible movie. It's the one with Michael Caine, right?
Under Siege, I think, was the first one, right? That he was actually decent at. So Under Siege,
arguably, this is my time of life. So I worked in a video store during this time. So this is like I've said before on the show, there's a window of time that I will challenge anybody to a trivia situation. So from 87 to 93, I pretty much watched everything that was put out. So during that time, there was Above the Law, Hard to Kill, Marked for Death, Out for Justice, and then Under Siege showed up. I would argue,
so Under Siege was in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, so Under Siege, I would argue, is probably his best and was his biggest hit, and it was a Warner Brothers release. Above the Law, not bad. I have a good place for me in Hard to Kill, but I did remember he did On Deadly Ground. If I'm not mistaken, that's the oil one in Alaska with Michael Caine. And
oh my God!
And he directed.
John C. McGinley, Billy Bob Thornton. It was an awesome cast.
But he directed.
And he directed it. Yeah,
and he was
a mess.
So drunk on his own power, I could only imagine what that was like. But he was trying. But it was a social impact movie.
Podcast of what not to do in studio production. That movie would check all the boxes.
But that was a movie, if I remember correctly, that was a social impact movie. He was trying to say something about American with Eskimo. Was it Eskimos or American Indian? And oil and the environment.
Alaska.
It was Alaska. So it was like the natives of Alaska and all this. So it really was a bit preachy, if I remember correct. It was like a bit preachy.
It was preachy. It was bad.
It was just bad.
There was nothing good about it.
Bad cinema. It started to
The only thing good about it was it put some money in my pocket so I could get closer to making my independent film that was the kind of helped me get to Slamdance. That's the way to look at it.
That's an absolute wonderful way to look at it, my friend, I have to say. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show. Now, do you have any tips for finding funding for these social impact films? Because when you're doing a social impact film, funding opportunities are more relevant than the action movie starring Eric Roberts and Michael Madsen. So you have places you could go to get that. Do you have any tips for the listeners?
Well, I do cover that a little bit in the book, and I have a list of organizations, and it really just depends kind of on how much you're looking for. There's probably half a dozen or so, and I know Seed and Spark has a lot of information about that. Fledgling, you can go to the IDA website and see a really long list of organizations that support docs, a lot of grants. What's also interesting is the crowdfunding campaign has kind of shifted to equity crowdfunding. Yep. And so now you can get a piece of the movie instead of just, a T-shirt. So right. So I do think there are a lot of opportunities, and as we both know, you can make these movies for next to nothing. So it's just a question of how creative you can be. But the other thing I'll just add is there are companies like Creative Visions, right, that really support as a fiscal partner and with a lot of tools and outreach and a lot of examples, and they have talks and they bring filmmakers in, and they really support this social impact space with a lot of information and resources that are hard to find in one shop. So that's another organization to know about.
And I think moving forward, there has been definitely an uptick in social impact cinema over the last 20 years. I mean, just from the moment where I was talking, that little magical moment when I worked at a video store, that, from there, I don't remember seeing many. It was the 80s, so it was a little different. But there wasn't a lot of social impact films, but they have becoming more and more and more and more. Oh God, I can't believe Inconvenient Truth. Yeah, that launched an entire conversation.
I talked about that a lot in my book. Oh, that's what triggered me.
It's such a powerful use of the medium. I mean, what they were able to do, and I actually taught trailer editing in colleges and classes, and I bring out the Inconvenient Truth trailer. That trailer was so well edited. Yeah. It was so powerful. And it's Al Gore in doing a slideshow. Like,
it's incredible what they managed to do.
They made the movie, they made Al Gore kind of cool. It was kind of weird watching that. Yeah. And then you watch a movie like Super Size Me, which completely started a global conversation about obesity and about food and about so much so that the multi-billion-dollar company stopped supersizing.
Exactly.
That's amazing. A big deal. It was amazing. So these films do hit, and in the just hypersensitive times that we live in, where any little thing offends, the corporations are so sensitive to this. So can you imagine if Super Size Me showed up today? Oh my, could you imagine? Because that was that wasn't pre-internet, but it was like early.
It was early.
It was really, when did that come out? Like that was the 90s.
It was, it was more than 10 years ago.
No, it's definitely the 90s if I'm not mistaken, but late 90s when that came out. So late 90s or early 2000s, but it was like pre-Facebook, pre-insane social media. I know you're looking it up. Go ahead. Go look it up. Because
I was going to try and find it while you're talking.
So I think that there is an uptick, and I think it's a very powerful way for a filmmaker to make a difference in the world and also change minds and help people with this. Because we work in arguably the most powerful media in the world as far as cinema, television content, like the video content. You can watch a movie and your life changes. Like you make a difference,
Yeah. And So 2004, by the way.
Okay, good. I wasn't too far off.
Not too far. But the thing is, these movies are movies that you start a dialogue with somebody that may not know anything about it, right? You see something, it's like hearing a new song. You want to tell your friend about that new song. You see one of these movies and it strikes you somehow. It makes you want to talk about it and share the information. And one of the things that I think is the next wave, I started this a bit with Cause Cinema, and then I got sidetracked with these other ideas, but is I believe there needs to be a more concentrated approach at connecting the cause to the movie. Mm-hmm. And so that if you see the movie, when you finish the movie, you're actually on a landing page that tells you more about the causes if you want to get involved or make a donation or read more about it. That's something that hasn't really happened yet. And I think, participant media was the likely candidate to assume that role, and they did a lot with their digital, and then they shut it down. So somebody needs to do that in a big way, because what you don't want to do is see one of these movies that can really make a difference and then kind of go out to dinner and forget about it, right? You want to be able to make a difference, and that's why calls to action are so important. Yeah,
I just saw the film Game Changers, which was, I just read that was the biggest documentary in iTunes history within 2 weeks, which about vegan athletes. Yeah. And I've had so many people publicly now come out, like Dolph Lundgren and Robert Downey Jr. and all these people that watch the documentary, and they're just like, yeah, I'm changing. I'm not trying to preach here, guys. Eat your meat. It's up to you. But I'm just using it as an example of a film that's had immense impact. I mean, I haven't seen impact in that space as much probably since either What the Health or Fork Over Knives.
Forks Over Knives.
Yeah, they were the first. Wasn't Fork Over Knives the first?
I think Forks Over Knives. Well, I think Food Matters might have come around first, but I think Forks Over Knives is the one that really busted it open, and they were smart talking about your filmtrepreneur is, they had a companion piece, they had a magazine, they had a website. I mean, they've created a whole franchise around this, but I think that, Louis, who also did The Cove, right?
Yes.
And Raising Extinction. So he knows what he's doing. He's got an Oscar, and he knows how to make a difference. And I think with that movie came out of Sundance last year, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't see it there, Game Changers. So yeah, it's going to have an impact for sure. And more importantly, back to your other comment about distribution, it doesn't really help if you have a message and nobody sees it, right? So you got to find your audience, and not everybody's going to have the luck of an acquisition out of Sundance and an iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes deal. And also having James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Jackie Chan as your executive producers, like that doesn't hurt. Didn't hurt in the least. So Ben, I wanted to thank you again for being on the show. I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
I think mentorship is key. Find people that are doing what you want to be doing and reach out to them, because most of them are willing to help. And if you know what genre you want to be in, try and find somebody that's making projects in that genre. I think one of the other challenges is some people think they want to make movies, but it turns out they don't want to make movies. They just want to be connected to the movie business. So I think, part of the challenge is to figure out which part of the business you want to be in, right? And then figure out who can mentor you and give you advice on the best path to reach that goal.
So you mean to tell me there's people in the business who just want to be famous and don't really care about the work? Stop it, John. Stop it.
Yeah.
Next, you're going to tell me distributors are, a lot of distributors are predatory. Like, what are you even saying? What is it's up is down, down is up. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria.
The key is get into a training program and be willing to do internships, because a lot of those internships lead to full-time gigs.
Yeah, and if not, it starts sponge. And if not, you start building that rhinoceros skin that you need to build up in this business without question.
That's right.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
I think the lesson that I learned over time in the film business was I kind of believe that if you did something and you did it really, really well, that you'd be able to make a lot of money.
I love that. That's awesome. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And then I realized, okay, if I want to be a really good curator and a really good festival director, or I want to teach film classes, or I want to write books, unfortunately, most of those don't generally pay. Making documentaries is not going to make you rich. And I'm not saying I got in this to get rich. I'm just saying I think I kept saying I'm not going to think about the financial picture and what I have to do to get my kids through school.
Sure.
I'm just going to work really hard. And so I think the lesson was, you know what, you got to go the other way. You got to love what you do. And fortunately for me, I've loved every minute of this journey. I've got to make movies. I've got to meet and discover tons of filmmakers. I love what I do. But the lesson I learned was you can't think about where the money is going to come from.
Oh, no.
And think that just if I do this really well and I work really hard and I'm good at it, that the money will come. Because the truth is, some of these categories in the film space don't pay as well as, producing a movie for 20th Century Fox.
And even those films sometimes.
Or Disney.
Or exactly. There is no more 20th Century Fox, sir. Come on.
Right.
Come on.
Right.
It's gone now. And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Ooh. I have to say Citizen Kane. I saw it in film school, and I know that's kind of an easy answer. Mm-hmm. Life is Beautiful, which I had the pleasure of showing with Benini and everyone there at the Chinese when I was running AFI. I love that movie. And my third one, I think one of the most impactful movies for me kind of coming out of film school, Sex, Lies, and Videotape.
Yeah. Soderbergh's first film and actually what put Sundance on the map.
Yeah, very influential.
Well, he is in general.
Those are three big ones.
Yeah, Steven is in general very influential. What he does and what he's doing now with iPhones is pretty insane. So I'm glad there's someone like him out there doing what he's doing.
Yeah,
and for that sake,
and he gets back.
And also, I'm glad that you're out there doing what you're doing and fighting the good fight and helping filmmakers find not only, meaning sometimes in using this medium to actually help other people, which is very important, but also helping them find their path in this business and in life. And once you get a taste of this, of doing something social and something that helps other people, it's fairly addictive. And
it's very rewarding.
Yeah. Yeah. You might not live in the Hollywood Hills, but you're happy. You're happier. Right. I feel, but you never know. Like, you live in the Hollywood Hills and have social impact. I mean, look, Arnold did it.
Yeah. Well, one of the taglines I used for Cause Cinema was see good, do good, feel good. And I think that kind of sums it up, right? You get to see good social impact movies. You want to do good, mm-hmm. right? With the call to action, and you'll feel good for doing so. That's
an amazing.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be here. I've been listening to your show and huge fan.
I appreciate that, but thanks so much. And real quick, where can people find you and your work?
causepictures.com is kind of my anchor organization, and then for the book, Filmmaking for Change, obviously.
Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you coming on the show, and keep fighting the good fight, my friend.
Thank you. You too.
I want to thank Jon so much for being on the show and being an inspiration to the tribe on how to use your filmmaking to change the world, to change society. And again, guys, you don't have to put all the pressure of the world and the world's problems on your art and on your films and on your writing. But if you can make a slight change, use a theme, use something that can change somebody's mind to really help the world as a whole, it is, I think, really, really important that you use this very powerful medium that we call filmmaking to make a change in the world in any small way we can. Now, if you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, including links to his book, Filmmaking for Change, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/394. And if you haven't already checked out the new Indie Film Hustle Academy, where we have an assortment of film education courses and workshops and seminars, really high-end stuff for the tribe, just head over to ifhacademy.com. Thank you for listening, guys. I hope you're all staying safe out there. It is crazy and getting crazier. Please stay home. Please protect yourselves and protect your neighbors. Wear a mask, if at all possible, when you go out, and try to do whatever you can to make this world a little bit better than it was before you got here. Thank you again so much. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.